This was an embarrassing performance. How do you lose at home to the Dallas Wings? You lose at home to the Dallas Wings that lost to the gum on the bottom of the shoe, Chicago Sky 3 times. They lost to the Sky 3 times. You lose to the Dallas Wings. Man, stop it, man. Stephanie White is a joke.
What if I told you the Indiana Fever just lost the most controversial game of the season? And it wasn't even close. The 81-80 defeat against the Dallas Wings wasn't just another upset. This was a masterclass in how broken officiating and questionable coaching decisions can destroy a team's playoff hopes in real time.
Right here, Sophie and Paige. Sophie has her arms out. Sophie doesn't have her arms on Paige, and Paige just shoves her. Paige just shoves her, and it's called a foul on Sophie. But then this is, in my opinion, one of the most egregious no call or calls I've ever seen in basketball.
The numbers tell one story, but the footage tells another. When Sophie Cunningham gets called for a phantom foul while Paige Bueckers literally shoves her way to space without consequence, you know something's wrong. When your own coach waits until 1.7 seconds are left on the clock to call timeout, you realize the problems run deeper than just the refs.
Watch Paige Bueckers and Sophie Cunningham right here. So Paige Bueckers pushes Sophie Cunningham, but Sophie Cunningham gets called for the foul. Again, somebody please answer. Where in this clip does Sophie foul Paige? If anything, the foul call should be called on Paige Bueckers. At this point, WNBA refs, this is getting so bad. You have to be better. This is terrible, man.
Let's start with the most obvious robbery. Fourth quarter, Fever fighting back from 17 points down, momentum swinging, crowd electric. Then Bueckers extends her arm, creates separation with a clear offensive push. In any other game, that's an offensive foul. Instead, they call it on Cunningham. That single possession swing handed Dallas the victory on a silver platter.
Guys, today, it's bad enough when you have the referees being so incompetent, so inconsistent, clearly calling things one way for a certain player and calling it another way for another player.
But that wasn't even the worst part. The inconsistency became a pattern. Bueckers getting superstar treatment on every drive, while Fever players couldn't breathe on opponents without hearing a whistle. The referees weren't just missing calls, they were actively tilting the court toward one team. Even Caitlin Clark, sitting on the bench due to injury, couldn't contain her frustration. Cameras caught her pointing and clapping at the officials after the final buzzer, a rare public display of anger from someone who usually keeps her composure. When the league's biggest star feels compelled to call out the officiating, you know the situation has reached a breaking point.
I think she deserves to be a WNBA coach. I think she's a terrible decision maker. She's terrible. She's a negative basketball coach.
While everyone focused on the refs, Stephanie White was busy engineering her own disaster. Picture this. Your team has clawed back from a massive deficit. You're down by 1 point, and Natasha Howard grabs a crucial rebound. The clock is ticking. Every second matters. This is exactly when championship coaches earn their reputation.
We don't call a timeout at the first case, we don't call a timeout at the second instance, and we don't call a timeout the third time. Instead, we wait until the last possible second to call a timeout.
Instead of calling timeout immediately, White let precious seconds tick away. And tick away, and tick away. By the time she finally called timeout, only 1.7 seconds remained. What kind of play can you possibly draw up with 1.7 seconds? A prayer? Because that's all the time allowed for.
And the opposing team is the Dallas Wings, and they're not any good. I mean, seriously, what just happened during this game?
The rotation decisions were equally baffling. Lexi Hall, who provided energy earlier in the season, barely touched the court. Meanwhile, players who hadn't found their rhythm got heavy minutes in crunch time. The result? Disjointed offense, shaky defense, and a team that looked like strangers instead of professionals. This wasn't White's first coaching disaster either. With Clark sidelined, the offense has struggled to find identity. Instead of adapting the system to fit available players, White keeps forcing the same rigid framework that worked when everyone was healthy. That's not coaching, that's hoping. The WNBA is at a crossroads. The league just signed a massive media deal worth billions. Attendance is up, and stars like Clark are bringing unprecedented attention. But what happens when fans start believing games are decided by officiating mistakes instead of player performance? This isn't just about one controversial game. All season long, players and coaches have complained about inconsistent whistles. Some nights, physical play goes uncalled. Other nights, the slightest contact sends players to the free throw line. When it happens in nationally televised games featuring the league's biggest stars, the damage multiplies. Stephanie White didn't hold back in her post-game comments, calling out the double standard in officiating. But here's what's interesting. She said nothing about her own coaching mistakes. Zero accountability for the late timeout. No mention of questionable rotations. When leaders refuse to acknowledge their own role in defeats, it creates a culture where everyone looks for external blame instead of internal improvement. Sophie Cunningham broke her silence about the officiating, specifically targeting how Bueckers received every freaking whistle, while Fever players got penalized for identical contact. These aren't casual complaints from sore losers. These are professional athletes risking fines to speak publicly about systemic problems. The league has already shown its willingness to punish critics. White herself was recently fined for previous comments about officiating. But when multiple players across different teams start voicing similar concerns, it suggests the problems run deeper than individual grievances. Even injured players couldn't stay quiet. Clark's visible frustration after the game spoke volumes about how the league's biggest attraction views the current state of officiating. When your marquee player feels compelled to confront refs publicly, you've got an image problem. The loss dropped the Fever to 6th place at a crucial point in the playoff race. Every game matters now, and they can't afford to waste opportunities against weaker opponents like Dallas. The Wings had lost 5 straight games before this victory. This should have been a routine win for a team with championship aspirations. But the bigger concern isn't this single loss. It's the pattern of late-game collapses, questionable coaching decisions, and inability to close out winnable games. With Clark's return timeline still uncertain, the Fever need maximum efficiency from every possession and every coaching decision. If White continues deflecting responsibility while making the same tactical errors, this talented roster might waste an entire season. Boston and Mitchell are legitimate building blocks, but they need leadership that adapts and improves instead of making excuses. The August 12th disaster exposed everything wrong with the current WNBA landscape. Inconsistent officiating undermines competitive integrity. Coaching that refuses self-reflection wastes talented rosters. And when both problems happen simultaneously, you get exactly what we witnessed. A game that felt decided by everything except basketball skill. The league's growth depends on fan trust. People need to believe that superior play determines outcomes, not referee bias or coaching blunders. Right now, that trust is cracking. Every controversial call, every tactical mistake, every post-game excuse chips away at the credibility the WNBA has worked decades to build. This isn't just about the Fever anymore. It's about whether the league can fix these fundamental problems before they derail the momentum that stars like Clark helped create. The solution requires accountability from referees, coaches, and league officials who seem more interested in protecting reputations than addressing legitimate concerns. But this controversy runs deeper than one game. The patterns we're seeing remind veteran fans of darker chapters in professional basketball history. Let's talk about something that should terrify every WNBA fan. The inconsistent officiating, the questionable calls favoring certain teams, the growing distrust between players and referees. Sound familiar? It should, because we've seen this movie before with Tim Donaghy, the NBA referee who admitted to betting on games he officiated and making calls that influenced point spreads during multiple seasons. Industry experts warn that another referee scandal is not just possible, but likely in professional basketball. When officials consistently make questionable calls that benefit specific outcomes, it creates the perfect environment for corruption to flourish. The WNBA's rapid growth and increased betting interest make it an even more attractive target. Donaghy's scandal didn't happen overnight. It started with small inconsistencies, preferential treatment for certain players, and patterns that seemed innocent until the FBI investigation revealed the truth. The parallels to current WNBA officiating are uncomfortable to ignore. Here's what makes the Fever situation even more disturbing. Caitlin Clark received 5 flagrant fouls during the 2024 season, with 4 of them coming against Angel Reese's Chicago Sky. That's not coincidence. That's a pattern. The Kennedy Carter incident, where she gave Clark a shoulder shot that knocked her to the floor before an inbound pass, was initially called a common foul. Only after massive public outcry did the WNBA upgrade it to a flagrant 1 violation. Think about that. The league's biggest star gets body-checked away from the ball, and referees initially saw nothing wrong. But Carter's hit wasn't isolated. Angel Reese committed a flagrant foul against Clark on June 16th, making contact with Clark's head. Again, these weren't basketball plays. They were deliberate attempts to intimidate the league's most marketable player. And again, the officials seemed hesitant to protect her. The message being sent is clear. If you're Caitlin Clark, you're fair game. If you're anyone playing against Caitlin Clark, you get the benefit of the doubt. This selective enforcement doesn't just affect individual games, it shapes how players approach competition and how fans view the league's integrity. Here's the uncomfortable truth the WNBA doesn't want you thinking about. The league's officiating problem goes beyond one player or one game. It's about the need for better and more consistent calls across the W. But why aren't these improvements happening? Professional sports betting on WNBA games has exploded alongside the league's popularity. Every questionable call, every missed foul, every game-changing decision by referees now has direct financial implications for thousands of bettors. When officials consistently favor certain teams or players, it creates predictable patterns that savvy gamblers can exploit. The Fever Wings game is a perfect example. Dallas was significant underdogs at home, yet received favorable whistles throughout the contest. Did the officials consciously try to influence the outcome? Probably not. But their inconsistent enforcement created exactly the type of advantage that turns long-shot bets into winners. This isn't about conspiracy theories. It's about understanding how broken officiating systems create opportunities for corruption. Tim Donaghy's scandal happened because he recognized these patterns and realized he could influence them for personal profit. The WNBA's current officiating problems provide similar opportunities. Let's address the elephant in the room. Clark's treatment by officials isn't happening in a vacuum. She represents something that makes certain people uncomfortable. A straight, white, Iowa-bred player who's become the face of a league traditionally dominated by different demographics. The targeting isn't just physical, it's psychological warfare designed to diminish her impact and test her resolve. When Carter shoulder-checked her and officials initially called it a common foul, they sent a message: "We won't protect you the way we protect others." Angel Reese was fined for skipping post-game media availability after one of these incidents, but that's pocket change compared to the statement being made on the court. Players who target Clark know they'll get lighter punishment than they would for similar actions against other stars. This selective enforcement reflects deeper cultural tensions within the WNBA. Some veterans resent Clark's instant stardom and media attention. Some fans prefer the league's traditional identity to its new mainstream appeal. And some officials, consciously or not, seem influenced by these dynamics when making split-second decisions. The WNBA just signed media deals worth over $200 million annually. Attendance is up 48% this season. Merchandise sales are breaking records. Clark's jersey became the fastest-selling rookie jersey in league history. The financial momentum is unprecedented. But scandals kill momentum faster than anything else. Ask the NBA about attendance and television ratings during the Donaghy investigation. Ask cycling about sponsorship deals after the Lance Armstrong revelations. Ask baseball about fan trust during the steroid era. The WNBA can't afford a crisis of confidence right now. Every questionable call, every obvious missed foul, every game that feels predetermined chips away at the credibility they need to sustain growth. Corporate sponsors don't invest in leagues where fans question competitive integrity. The Wings Fever controversy might seem like an isolated incident, but it represents a pattern that threatens everything the WNBA has built. If fans start believing games are influenced by factors other than player performance, the league's carefully constructed momentum could collapse overnight. The WNBA stands at a crossroads. They can acknowledge the officiating problems, implement meaningful reforms, and restore competitive balance. Or they can continue defending the status quo while hoping controversies fade from memory. The league office has already shown its priorities. Despite widespread criticism from players, coaches, and fans about consistency in how games are called, meaningful changes remain elusive. Referee evaluation processes are secretive. Accountability measures are minimal. Public criticism gets punished more severely than incompetent officiating. Meanwhile, Stephanie White continues making the same tactical mistakes while blaming external factors. The Fever keep wasting winnable games due to poor coaching decisions, and Clark remains sidelined while her team's playoff hopes slip away. The most rigged game in WNBA history wasn't just about 81-80 on the scoreboard, it was about exposing systematic failures that threaten everything the league claims to represent. The patterns we're seeing, inconsistent officiating, selective enforcement, coaching without accountability, mirror the conditions that created basketball's biggest scandals. Until these issues get resolved, every game carries the risk of another controversy. Every questionable call undermines fan trust. Every missed opportunity to address root problems brings the league closer to a credibility crisis that could destroy years of progress. The clock is ticking, and the WNBA needs to decide: fix these problems now, or watch their golden opportunity slip away forever.